Residential plumbing. So you have here your water inlet splits, cold line splits. Part of it goes to the water heater. The rest of it goes to the various plumbing fixtures throughout the house. From the water heater, you get your hot water line going to all of the fixtures around the house. This here you have your hose bib. This is greatly simplified. It also shows the drain system where all of the individual fixtures have their traps except for the toilet, which is trapped internally. So you don't want another trap on that. And then it goes to the various stacks and the drains. You have your main stack, you have vent stacks for the other fixtures. You have a standpipe for your washing machine, and all goes to either the sewer or septic system. Greatly simplified, but this at least gives you the general overview of a residential plumbing system. So what are the inspection requirements? These are the current Maryland and current, I believe that's current ASHI as well, requirements. So we shall inspect the interior water distribution. We have to take a look. Basically, if we can see it, it has to do with plumbing. We need to be taking a look at it. Water heating equipment and hot water supply systems, all the vents, fuel storage and fuel distribution systems, and sewage ejectors, and sump pumps and such. Describe. So we need to be able to identify, and sometimes some of these pipes can be hard to identify because they're covered with schmutz and dirt, and you're never going to really be able to see them properly. But you have to do your best. One of the phrases I teach my students, and I am embarrassed to say that I do use it, is appears to be. Yeah, a water supply pipe appears to be plastic, appears to be copper, because you can't really guarantee it unless you're willing to take samples and test. You have to describe the water heating equipment, and this is important, the location of main water and fuel shutoff valves. People don't know how their houses work anymore. I know Kenny was talking a bit about that too, but it used to be you knew exactly how your house worked and how it was put together, no more. So part of our job, one of our job really is to educate our client. So telling them where these shutoffs is very important. And most inspection software packages automatically generate a page of this is where your emergency shutoffs are once you identify the picture as being the emergency shutoff. So it makes it automatic. You are not required to inspect any of these things: washing machine connections, interiors, wells and well pumps. I mean, we look at them, we identify them. We basically say we report the presence, disclaim the inspection, recommend that it all be looked at by a qualified well person. Same thing with water conditioning systems. One thing we do point out in our reports is if it's for a purchase, that they should inquire with the seller, is the system owned or leased? Because things like Culligan typically are leased systems. So that would be a nasty surprise if you thought you're getting water treatment equipment and you pulled it out. You closed on the house and it was all gone. Solar geothermal, other renewable energy systems, that is gradually going to be changing. I'm sure that's all going to be part of the SOPs soon. Manual and sprinkler systems and irrigation, septic systems. Again, all of these are report the presence, disclaim the inspection. That's what I do. You are not required to determine whether water and sewer are municipal or well and septic. We always phrase it as per the listing or according to the agent, because we can't, even if there's a well on the property, we can't prove that that's what is providing water to the house, because a lot of that stuff is going to be behind the scenes. The water quality testing can be a adjunct service, an ancillary service. You're not required to measure flow or fill shower pans and fixtures to test for leaks. It's another company business decision, but it's we don't fill shower pans and we don't fill bathtubs. That is just let's see. Jim, did you have a question? Or Hollis, how are we going to handle questions here?
Do we have questions?
Well, Jim Vaughn raised his hand.
Or did he? Yeah, let's just put your questions in the chats, guys. Let's don't interrupt.
So water can kill you. Lots of things that are happy to live in water and be carried by water. This is just a small sampling of the things that can end up in a water system that you really don't want to have in your water system. It's why municipal systems are constantly tested. It's why we always recommend some form of water treatment for well systems, UV sterilizers at the very least. But all of these things can be carried by the water, and you don't want them in there. And that's really keeping your water, domestic water supply, sanitary is the prime function of the plumbing system. So it can have many sources. Most houses, at least in urban areas, are going to be on the municipal system, but you can have a private well. You can have a shared well, a community well. Some developments have community wells that the surrounding individual houses draw on. So it might not just be your well. You might even have a cistern for catching rainwater, or you can get water from a spring or a pond if you're really, really rural. And if you're getting water from any of these sources, absolutely, I would recommend getting water treatment equipment for your client, just because you want to make sure that the water's as good as it can be. So what can go wrong? All of these things are things that can go wrong with water, water service. Leaks is definitely the first one. You can get the contamination, not enough water. And if you're on a private well, that could be a problem with your pump. Pumps can and do fail spontaneously. Happened to us. And they had to bring up 225 feet of water line to replace the pump. Temporary repairs, we've all seen those. I like to call them, as I call to my students, permarary, because they're meant to be temporary. I'm sorry, permarary. So because they work for now, so we'll just keep using the temporary repair until they forget that it's temporary and it ends up being permanent. So permarary.
I like it.
Faulty materials, get into that, and stuff at the end of the service life. So when the water comes in from the water main, there should be a couple of shutoff valves to isolate the various equipment at the beginning. You've got the pressure reducing valve. Now, you may or may not have that. Not all systems will have it, although it's become more common to at least have it. It's one of those better have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Water meters can be either inside or outside. Backflow preventers, again, that's something you may or may not have, depending on the system. And there should be some form of thermal expansion device, not necessarily a thermal expansion tank, because you can also have a thermal expansion valve located in an upstairs toilet that does the same thing as the thermal expansion tank. It just dumps a certain amount of water. When the pressure gets too high, it dumps a certain amount of water into the toilet tank that's comes out with the next flush. Let's see here. So defects in your water surface, improper supply material, corroded valves, all of these are defects that we find. This is one of, I had never seen a dug well on a property, but this was a 2-pipe dug well. The pump was in the basement or the cellar of the house. You would never get a conventional mortgage on this property because this is considered totally unsanitary. I mean, small children, animals can fall down in the well and flavor your water, and you really, really don't want that. So this would have to be redug. They'd have to find another place to dig a proper sanitary drilled well, because I don't know of any dug wells that would qualify for any kind of financing. This is another interesting defect. This was a house in Barnesville somewhere. Anybody spot what the problem is? That's the wellhead. Inside wellheads, very uncommon, but they still can be out there. They're not allowed anymore. So that would also have to be relocated to somewhere outside the foundation. Kenny was talking about exposed wellheads. This one's too short. This one was maybe 5 inches, made 4 or 5 inches off. And you can see that if it were, the snow were deeper, you could get contamination in the wellhead. What we see a lot is loose wellheads. They should be tight. I always give them a jiggle to make sure that they don't move. But wellheads, I want to see them at least 8 inches, ideally 12 inches above grade.
So Welmoed, when you say that indoor wells are no longer allowed, that's per what? Is that a jurisdictional thing? Is that a code
It's
thing?
probably a jurisdictional thing. I'm not a code person, but from the talking to other people, you can't have indoor wells. You have now challenged me. I will go find my source and let you know.
Okay.
Because I would hate to find out that they are allowed and I've been telling people the wrong thing. Don't really see much of this anymore. Luckily, this is lead pipe. You can always identify it by the wiped joints. This is a drain pipe, but there are still some lead water service pipes out there. I know Hagerstown has a number of them. They really ought to have been replaced by now, but of course, money plays a big role in that. But you can always identify lead by the wiped joints. Big Blue. So this is the old style Big Blue. This was a surprise that I got when doing a new construction final last year. I was in the basement and I saw this blue pipe. I'm like, holy cow, are they putting Big Blue in again? And the plumbing inspector was on site. So I asked him, I said, is this Big Blue? He said, it's blue, but it's a different formulation. So it doesn't have the same issues because this old Big Blue was polybutylene, but the newer is a reformulated, it's a new formula. So it doesn't have the problems that polybutylene had. I don't know what its track record is, but all I know is you can definitely see the difference in color. This is a very pale Smurfy blue, and this is more of a royal blue. So don't get them mixed up.
I think that's PEX, isn't it, Welmoed?
It could be a PEX, but he didn't mention that it was PEX. He just said it's a new formulation. So not quite sure exactly what it is. But it's not Big Blue. Corrosion. Corrosion on shutoff valves. Duct tape does not fix corrosion. It's a nice attempt. But this is definitely not how one goes about fixing corroded valves. The whole thing has to be cut out and replaced. Y'all know, never touch these. Do not ever touch these.
So Welmoed, you said when you were talking about lead, you were saying look for the wipe joint, but Joe Richmond is saying something about scratching the lead. And if you scratch it, you're going to get that kind of dull metallic.
Oh yeah, it's very soft. That's why it was so popular for plumbing, is it was so soft and easy to work with. I don't want to damage anything. So if I were to come across these dull gray pipes with wiped joints, I would not test it. I would call it out as suspected lead and have somebody else confirm it, because knowing my luck, I would go to put a nick in the pipe and cause a leak. So I don't want to do that. So these are the 3 types of valves that are the most common that we see. The ball valves, these are the kind that you want. Globe valves and gate valves, the problem with those is that they can be opened partially. And you don't want to have a partial open valve. You want an all off or all on valve when you're talking about your water service valve, the main valve at the foundation. So you don't want to see gate valves or globe valves.
So Welmoed, it looks like people are still hung up on that lead pipe thing.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the chat. So
Oh, no, that's my job.
Okay.
So I think when Mike is saying the bulb is also a giveaway, I think he's talking about the wiped joint.
Yes.
Like, isn't that what you're talking about? The bulb is when they joined those pipes together, they would build up a bulge of lead at the connection, and that's what you're seeing at those connections. Those are the wiped joints.
Right, because the pipes are just butted. They're not jointed the way modern plumbing pipes are with like bells and spigots and things like that, but they're just butted up against each other. And then someone holds a fireproof asbestos containing mat underneath that joint, and someone else takes a pot of melted lead and pours it over the joint, and that person then wipes the lead over the joint and builds up this layer of lead to join the two pipes together. So that's what I mean by a wiped joint, which is why that bulbous join is the dead giveaway for a lead pipe, because there's no other pipe that's joined like that.
Now, Joe's calling it an egg. I've never heard it called an egg before.
No, I just always call it a wiped joint.
Joints, and that I think that's the proper term.
Yeah. So water pressure. Check water pressure. We always check it at the hose bibs when we can. 125 is a bit excessive. That is definitely high enough to bust open CPDC and probably give copper pipes a bad time as well. The thing to be aware of when you're checking water pressure at the hose bib is if you do get high water pressure, reserve judgment on reporting that the house has a pressure problem until you go in to where the hose bib, the supply line for the hose bib comes off. Does that supply line go to the hose bib before or after a pressure reducing valve? Because sometimes you will see the feed for a hose bib come off the main water service line before you have your pressure reducing valve. So you'll have high pressure for your hose bib, but the rest of the house will be a normal pressure. So if you do come across that, then you really should try to find a laundry sink or other faucet that is threaded for your pressure gauge and take an inside reading as well. Backflow, excuse me, backflow valves. We are starting to see rebuildable backflow valves instead of the Watt 7. These are supposed to be serviced annually. Not that they are, but they are supposed to be serviced every year in order to maintain whatever kind of warranty, unlike the Watt 7, which is just supposed to be replaced every 5 years. But so that's what these look like. And so keep an eye out for those. They can also be combination backflow pressure reducers, lots of different configurations. So distribution defects. These are just a brief list of different defects you'll find in the water distribution system. So that's basically anything from where the water comes into the house to the fixtures. That's where all of these defects can come across. And we find them all the time.
Velman, what's the problem with a dead end?
A dead end, you're not supposed to have a dead end pipe longer than 2 feet because you will have static water just sitting there. So it'll get stagnant. And then if you get pressure changes up and down, that shifts that water and it may have developed contaminants in it. So it may have developed bacteria because all of the chlorine is inactive. So now any bacteria that reaches it can flourish. You don't ever want to have just standing stagnant water anywhere in your domestic water supply. It's one of the main reasons why if you have a fire suppression sprinkler system, there needs to be a backflow preventer between the sprinkler system pipes and the domestic water, because the sprinkler system always, it's got stagnant water. It's got water under high pressure, about 100 PSI it can be. And you don't want that water backfeeding into your domestic water supply and contaminating your drinking water. So Backflow prevention is important on that. And that's also, yes, definitely, you don't want to have the dead ends on water supply systems.
So do you have any more to say about the routine maintenance on backflow preventers?
Um, Other than they're supposed to be serviced annually. Not quite sure what that entails. I will have, Bob is more up on that, unfortunately. But yeah, that's, take it apart, check all the diaphragms, put it back together, but it's a plumbing thing. I would not want to DIY. If someone else has better information on that, I would love to know it. I don't encounter many of them. I'm still just seeing the Watt 7, probably because they're less expensive. But there are some jurisdictions that are mandating rebuildable backflows.
You see them on lawn irrigation systems.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I see. And then the commercial backflows are almost always rebuildables, and you do see them for the automatic lawn irrigation systems. Yeah.
So when they winterize those lawn irrigation systems in my area, they'll actually remove the backflow preventer, store it in the garage over the winter, and then they're supposed to, like you said, they're supposed to service it before they put it back in.
Yep. Yeah, you don't want water to freeze in one, because then that'll just break the internal mechanisms.
And then fire suppression systems too, Nick points out.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. You never want to go up in an attic and see an orange pipe. Anywhere where it gets below freezing, where it's a winter environment, you should never ever see orange pipe exposed in an attic or any other unconditioned space that is subject to cold, just because it can freeze and burst. And it's because it always has water. That's a very messy problem. So yeah, leaks, number one. It can be tough to photograph an active leak, because unless you can show a puddle or a drop or something like that, you can't really call it a leak. It's like a leak happened here at one time. So unless there is active water showing, you can't call it a leak. But if you can photograph the drop, you can legitimately say there is a leak in the pipe. Is a leak, not was a leak. Corrosion in a copper pipe that was buried in the dirt. You never want to have copper pipes exposed to dirt, concrete, or anything like that. It will corrode, and then that will be an expensive repair. Never touch these. Never, ever, ever touch these. These just they'll leak. Because either if you go to close it, you won't be able to open it. And if you go to open it, you won't be able to close it. I think we all should be able to recognize polybutylene on site. Here we have one where the fitting is starting to corrode. I'm assuming everybody calls out polybutylene. Hopefully there's almost none of it around anymore, because it's all failed by now. But we do still, once or twice a year, we do still encounter some polybutylene. So it's important to be able to recognize it. I have only seen it in gray for interior use, and then in the big blue, the blue for outside use. Those are the only two colors I'm aware it was ever manufactured in. The only other plumbing pipe that comes in a gray is PVC. Now, sometimes that's also in a polybutylene looking gray, but that's only for drains, not for supply. Polybutylene was only supply systems, because it's the flex pipe. It was the miracle low skill replacement for copper. Galvanized. The flecked silver material, that is the hallmark of galvanized steel. You definitely don't want to see that in any kind of water supply. As on the outside, it could look absolutely pristine, and that's what it can look like on the inside. Because it will corrode from the inside out. It develops these cysts and bumps on the inside that makes the water turbulent, which increases its corrosive power. You can get clogs. It's basically arteriosclerosis of your plumbing system. I never touch a galvanized pipe, because it may look just fine on the outside, but the exterior walls could be so eaten away that they're tissue thin, and just the pressure of a hand could cause a leak.
So Velma, there's a question about, you said something about copper in contact with the ground. I think we see copper in contact with ground a fair amount with water service entrance pipes.
It should not be in direct contact. It should be sheathed or put in a conduit, a plastic sheet, because you're not supposed to have it go straight through concrete at all. It is supposed to be protected either with a plastic sheath around it, or through a PVC pipe conduit, but it shouldn't be direct buried. Not without protection. Dezinkification of some of these plumbing fittings. This is, I think the Zern brand was the big thing. These were cheaper, foreign made. These are not my pictures, but I wanted to show an example of failing joints on PEX pipes. So you have to be careful that all of these can develop pinhole leaks. Never touch the corrosion, because that's actually plugging the leak. But it is an indication that that needs to be fixed now. CPVC, natural gas, natural draft water heater. You are supposed to have at least 12 inches of solid pipe from the draft hood. So you are supposed to have solid metal pipe going up the first. Is it 12 inches or is it 8 inches? I always get the number wrong. I always err on the side of caution and go bigger. But you're not supposed to have CPVC directly against the draft hood. It will melt. This is plastic.
Yeah, Jim is saying 18 inches. I'm not
18? Sure. Okay, I believe Jim. That sounds about right. So 18 inches.
Well, he says, I think.
Yeah. The more the merrier. The more the merrier. Now, of course, if you have
directly like you see there,
electric water heater, you can have this. This is fine with an electric water heater, but not with a draft hood, because you will melt your pipe.
So can you go back to that picture there? We've got a comment. Somebody's asking about the vent pipe being larger than the draft hood.
I think it's a double wall.
Yeah, so I think it can't be smaller than the draft.
No, it can be bigger. This may be whoops, I'm sorry. This may be a double wall B vent instead of a single wall vent connector. It's kind of hard to see inside it, but yeah, you can go a little bigger, but yeah, you're right. You can't have a diameter reduction in your exhaust. You can, I don't know if you can go bigger. Well, you can, because you can common vent a water heater into a larger flue with a furnace, but you can't go down in size.
So you said you can put CPVC on an electric water heater?
All the way down to the top of the tank, yes.
So this thing with CPVC is that it's getting brittle over time. With
the chlorine, yeah. When you get a high chlorine content, yes, it can definitely make the CPVC brittle. The other option is to do copper. I mean, there really are no perfect materials, because you've got all of this water going through it that is chemically active. All of this fresh water coming in has got a lot of ions in it. It's chemically reactive, and it's going to react with whatever it can react to as soon as possible. That's why you have your sacrificial anode. So it's going to have an impact on any kind of plumbing pipe you put in, no matter what it is. It's just a matter of the degree of deterioration.
So Sean's saying something about a recall, a FlowGuard recall. I wasn't aware of a recall of that. Does anybody have
I don't know about that. I would have to look that up.
Yeah, I was not aware of that. I know that I know that a lot of plumbers are saying they won't work with CPVC anymore.
We're still seeing it a lot.
No, it seems like it's the pipe of choice for new construction today.
Mhm.
But when it's 10, 15 years old, plumbers are saying they won't work on it because it's so brittle.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going to happen in the next decade with that stuff.
Well, yeah, it's we're discovering that time changes everything. So there's an awful lot that can happen to materials that we just couldn't foresee.
So Sean says that there's a class action pending against the flow guard.
Oh, I did not know that.
Do we know what the issues are? Sean, do you know? Well, there's a link right there. We can go look it up.
Cool. I'll have to look that up. Thank you, Sean. All right. But so it's important also to recognize the difference between CPVC and PVC. CPVC is rated for 100 psi. You can have a higher psi and a higher temperature. So it's rated 180. Whereas PVC, which is the white, not because this is cream, and usually it has that yellow stripe. That's if it's oh gosh, what's the brand name? Charlotte pipe is the cream with the yellow stripe, and then the PVC is just pure white. You cannot use PVC for domestic water supply. It's only for drain because it's not meant for hot water. It's not meant for water under pressure. So lots of unapproved materials that you may run across. We've run across it all. It's amazing seeing garden hose used as a water a pipe to run water from a house to a detached garage that had been turned into an apartment. Can't do that. It's not meant for potable water. Here's more corrosion. Again, you have, if you connect copper to steel, you're going to have what's called the galvanic response, two different metals. So they're going to become very, very active electrically and build up this corrosion. And to prevent that, you need the dielectric union. What that does is it breaks the flow of electrons between the copper and the dissimilar metal. Now, the problem with that is you have now, because this breaks the flow of electrons, one of the things it also does is it interrupts the bonding between these two pieces of metal. We see it most often when you have plastic fittings used to repair copper pipes poorly. So you have here a copper pipe, a copper pipe, and a copper pipe, and the joint has been done. Well, this is electrically neutral. You have now interrupted the lines, and anytime you have metal in a home that is not intended to be energized and to carry an electric current, it must be bonded. And that bond has to go all the way back to the electrical panel to meet up with the grounding system for the house. So if you interrupt a metal pipe with a plastic fitting, you have to put a jumper, a bonding jumper across that metal fitting so you have a continuous bond. It's another one of those small issues that we very, very rarely get to see done correctly.
So John's asking about using a brass fitting in lieu of a dielectric fitting. That doesn't make sense to me.
I think you can do that. Yeah.
Never heard of that.
Corrosion, that saddle valves. You should never ever use saddle valves on a flexible pipe. This is like copper tubing. Copper tubing is considered a flexible pipe and should not have any kind of saddle valve on it. It's simply too thin walled. So definitely not on PEX or on CPVC or on copper tubing, only really on copper piping should you use a saddle valve. Let me put it this way. I don't think I've seen saddle valves on CPVC. Now I have to search my memory. But they always leak.
Like them at all.
Yeah, I don't like them at all. No. So here we have a lovely tub But you have here a handheld shower wand that can go down into the tub. And what I'm not seeing is, unless this happens to be it, which I don't think it is, I am not seeing a backflow prevention system for this tub. So highly unlikely, but if you were to leave this shower head in a tub full of water, the water pressure drops in the rest of the house, it could get back siphonage of the bath water into the domestic water system. So anytime you have the potential for having the water faucet be below the flood rim of a tub, you've got to have some form of backflow prevention. Where we saw this, I'm sorry, I thought it was a different picture coming up. Here's an example of a dead end. So this was a shower head that was abandoned, but they had left the shower riser behind the wall. So you had like a 4-foot section of pipe filled with water, just sort of sitting there doing nothing because they just put a nipple over it in there. If you don't want the shower head, take the pipe out. So here's a picture. This is an older tub. You see these in old houses where the faucet is below the flood rim. So there needs to be backflow prevention. Hot water. We always measure water temperature at the kitchen sink with a chef's instant read thermometer. They're 2-pack for $8 at Sam's Club because we're always losing them. Easiest way to test the water. If I test the water in the, if I run the tub, especially soaking tub upstairs in the master bath, and if I check the hot water, if it feels hot, I will also test the water temperature at the tub, because there is supposed to be a tempering valve at a soaking tub to make sure that the water temperature at that tub is no more than 106 is the maximum for a soaking tub. It's 110 for a bidet, but a maximum temperature for a soaking tub is 106. So if I've seen soaking tubs with 140-degree water, and it's like, I don't want to scald myself in the tub, thank you.
So Jim is saying we're talking about the tub faucet discharge being below the flood rim of the sink of the tub. He's saying, well, some of the new tub fixtures have the backflow preventers built into them. It's impossible to tell. Well, I can tell on that one based on the age.
Oh yeah. This one definitely not. But that one, hard to tell. But I don't see where they could hide one unless it's right here. But I don't see to my semi-trained eye, I don't see what would make me think, oh, this is a backflow preventer. And if I can't see it, I have to remember the report is my opinion. In my opinion, there is no visible backflow preventer on this bathroom fixture. Let a plumber prove me wrong. This is what a mixing valve could look like. If there's a soaking tub in a master bath, you should always look under the sink closest to that soaking tub to see if there is a mixing valve underneath. What this does is it takes the hot water coming in from the house water supply, and it mixes in a little bit of cold water. And so that the hot water going to the tub, this is now the hot water going to the tub, the cold water going to the tub, the hot water is now safely below 100, below that 106 degrees. And there should be, if there is a bidet, there should also be a mixing valve.
So why is that just soaking tubs? Why isn't that all bathtubs?
Because I think it's assumed that you're not going to spend a lot of time in a regular bathtub, but a soaking tub, you may actually spend a lot of time in. So it may be a matter of exposure. I agree with you. I think that it would be a good idea to have them on any kind of bathtub, but they're not. Little details, again, not my picture, which wish it were, but here you have your PEX pipe. See how tightly it's stapled? This is a little itty bitty detail that, according to where I got this picture from, said that this one defect meant that the entire house had to be repiped because they couldn't tell if there's one, there's probably more. So little details like that, you cannot crimp these pipes. It will restrict the flow. CPVC also needs proper support. Don't leave it hanging. So fixture defects, these are all, I have a feeling I'm running out of time. So these are the common defects we find with various fixtures. Clearance for toilets and sinks, it's so important. We'd go by the 21 inches in the front, 15 inches measured from the center line of the flange to the wall or any solid obstacle. So a sink, a cabinet, a shower enclosure, anything that is solid needs to have 15 inches of clearance to the side for the toilet. I once had a Ryan Holmes super argue with me that, well, Ryan standard is 12 inches. Like, that's nice. IRC is, it's supposed to be 15. So I have no idea if whether they got their certificate or not. Generally, when builders, if builders have already gotten their sign off from the municipality, they're not going to change anything, even if it's egregiously wrong. When I opened this door, I thought it was a coat closet at first. Little bit of a clearance problem there. It's one of my favorite pictures, but double duty. This was a shower opening. Minimum opening for a shower is 22 inches. That is not 22 inches. This is another thing of how do you document something that you can't easily take a picture of. So I always, before I turn on the water in a tub shower or shower, I will jiggle the shower head, see if it's loose at the wall. And if it is, I will do my sign language thing. That's the ASL finger spelling for L, for loose. So I know and then I take a picture of my hand with the article that's loose. So I know when I'm back in the office looking at my pictures, it's like, why did I take a picture of the shower head? Because it was loose. And on the right, this is the finger spelling for the letter R. So when I do a finger spelling of R in front of a shower or faucet water control, it means hot, cold, reversed. If I were to do the letter R and it's in front of a door, that means it rubs. So context is important, but it's my own little personal sign language so that when I'm looking at pictures later, I don't have a problem of why did I take a picture of a door? This was one of the weirdest bathrooms I had ever been to. Black and white striped marble everywhere and mirrors. There you can see my reflection there. This was a door that opened inward, leading to a shower. The shower room was all black marble, totally, water stained, had no windows. So windowless, and the door opened in, totally unsafe. Custom built. That's how they wanted it. But I wrote it up as being a hazard.
Yeah, shower doors have to swing out.
They can swing in if they also swing out. But this one only went in. Santa Flush, or I'm sorry, Flushmate. These are pressurized flush assist toilets. The problem is that there was one series, the series 503. I think this is a 504, but the series 503, there was a recall on them because this is a two-part pressure tank, and it had this the ability to come apart explosively. It actually happened to us in our basement toilet in our last house, where Bob had just used it, and 10 minutes later, here's this bang, and the whole toilet tank was in pieces across the bathroom. So if you come across a Flushmate and it's a series 503, you should report it as potentially having a recall. There's links that you can use to see if it's subject to a recall, because that can really ruin your day.
Well, that's interesting. I was about to say that I've had two people give me firsthand anecdotes about themselves or family members having experienced those explosions. I now
Yep.
have three.
Yep. If I have only encountered recalled ones twice, and generally what I do is this is the recommendation is that you turn the water off to the toilet, flush the toilet to relieve the pressure in the tank. And then I use my red tape and I put a big red X over the seat. Don't use this, so that whoever lives there knows they should not use that toilet until it's repaired. It's one of the few times that I will operate a shutoff valve. DWV, briefly do some of this. These are some common defects.
Gentlemen, you have 3 minutes.
Oh boy. Okay, I'll talk fast. Yeah, if it looks like it's leaking and it's a soil pipe, don't test it with your hand. This is one of the most common defects. This is a sanitary T on its back. Sanitary T are meant for a horizontal to vertical application, not a vertical to horizontal application. One of the most common plumbing defects we find. Cysts on cast iron pipe mean that pipe is about to die. You can see the split starting to form. Oh, that needs to be called out for repair ASAP. Automotive radiator hose does not belong in your home plumbing system. It twists. If it's like this, it's done. No trap at all. Always look under the sink first. I'm just going to breeze past a couple of these because they're fun pictures. But yeah, you should never see this flex pipe. Just as the way I put it to my students is, just because they sell it at Home Depot does not mean it's a good product. It's a perma thing. Bottle traps are coming back. So you may, and this is a perfectly legitimate and an acceptable trap now, because people just didn't like the look of the P trap. But an S trap is still bad. And if one trap is good, isn't two traps better? No, this is double trapping. You definitely cannot have double trapping. The outlet for the garbage disposal is below the outlet to the wall. So this will never empty. It will always be full of water. I've seen this more often than I would have liked to admit, but it's amazing that how many times I still see that. This sink did not have a trap, but in this case, this was not a defect, because the job of a trap is to keep sewer gases out. This trap drained directly onto the ground outside. So there were no sewer gases. Now, that did mean that there could be bugs and other things crawling up your drain pipe and into your house. But technically, it didn't need a trap because it didn't need to keep out sewer gases. There's another example of sanitary T on its back, and you cannot glue black to white plastic. Well, you can, but you shouldn't. And we all know that this is a mechanical valve and it's not approved for traditional residential. It's only approved for manufactured housing, not for residential. It's a mechanical joint. It's a mechanical valve. Even if you paint it white, people will try to fool you. I'll just do one or two of cleanouts. Should be accessible. Good luck getting Roto-Rooter to get their snake in there or in there. Brand new construction. So just want to share a couple of pictures. This was the mansion on O Street. And if you've ever been there, this was one of the guest bathrooms. Toilets down here, showers up there. How do you get there? You pull out the stairs. That was such a cool detail. Totally not allowed anymore, but very cool detail. We still see the occasional outhouse, switched gray water to black water systems, not allowed, can't have that, it's not safe. The multiple traps, Always look under the sink before you run the water. Just because it's pretty doesn't mean you can have a chandelier fixture over a tub. The only way you can have that is if there's at least 8 feet from the rim to the bottom of the fixture. Not where the lights are, but the bottom of the fixture itself. Don't block your access doors. Don't drill into your building drain in order to drain your backflow for your water treatment system. You can definitely multitask here, but really now. Could not believe that. Also, that's not 15 inches. Another one with a high trap where the water level will be here the entire time. So another one where that's where the water level will be. Take off your test caps. The plumbing will not vent properly with the test caps in place. And this has always been one of my favorites. Like, how can you tell that plumbing was done without a permit? And that is it. So feel free to follow me on all the socials. I try to post pictures of weird finds and all of that. Were there any questions that didn't get addressed?
I think we got them all. That's well done. You're getting a lot of positive feedback, so I think people appreciate you. I know I do.
Yeah, Daniel, the deep traps because of those extra deep sinks, but still you can't, the trap, the water seal, the trap depth has to be between 2 inches and 4 inches. So yeah, definitely don't want them deeper than that.